Hi, everybody. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Hello, hello, hello. Welcome. I'm seeing people starting to roll in. Welcome. Nice to see all of you. Thanks for coming today. We are just getting situated over here, running just a minute or two behind. So I encourage you to grab your lunch, grab your favorite appropriate noontime beverage, and get yourself comfortable. We're going to get started here in just about 30 seconds or so as people continue to stream on in. I'm seeing lots of our tech friends roll in today. Hi, everybody. Nice to see you. Oh, I see somebody from Interconnection. If you don't know yet, this is a quick sea.citi announcement. We, the Chamber, WTIA, have partnered with Interconnection. We are running a laptop drive. If you have not heard about this laptop drive, please check it out. You can find information on our website. You can also find information. Apparently my cat wants to hear about the laptop drive, but you can find information on our website or on social media. And you can take your old laptops and they will be refurbished by Interconnection and then redistributed to immigrant and BIPOC communities here locally as the school year continues to get underway. So with that public service announcement and shameless plug and promotion, I am super pleased to have you here. My name is Nick Merriam, and I am the CEO of sea.citi. We are a tech industry nonprofit, and really we are working with all the tech companies and local community to create strong relationships between everybody. And we love talking about digital equity, which is what we are focused on here today. So I'm super excited to have with us David Keys, who is the digital equity manager of the city of Seattle. He's a fantastic guy. And he actually first started in this work about 30 years ago, which is really incredible to have somebody that has really seen this breadth of digital growth over the last number of decades. He works at the intersection of information and communication technologies, race and social justice, community engagement, and really leads a lot of work around the city's digital inclusion programming. In 2016, he actually received the inaugural Charles Benton Digital Equity Champion Award, which sounds very impressive. And it came from the National Digital Inclusion Alliance, which it makes it actually very impressive. So today we're going to talk about a number of items that the city is working on, and including the Technology Matching Fund grants, their access and adoption indicator research, and more. So, and a quick fun fact about David, he actually moved here from Tasmania, Australia, which is fascinating and probably for another conversation. So with that, I'd like to welcome David. David, thank you so much for joining us. Maybe you can just start off and give us a little bit of an overview of Seattle IT, what you do, all the good stuff.
Yeah, thanks, Nick. Glad to be here and glad to be here with you and everybody. And thanks to sea.citi for this continuing series too. So, yeah, so I'll just kind of do a little bit of a start with a big picture. I work in Seattle Information Technology Department, and which is a consolidated department of a number of IT things. So we do everything from the back-end systems for the email and the city's website to billing to support for 911 systems. So a lot of what Seattle IT is focused on is the internal systems that really make the city work on a daily basis, and then also protect the city from hacking and ransomware and all those. And so a lot of our department is really working closely with all the services that you interact with the city and the internal systems. And then an interesting piece really early on, as the city was even looking at putting information online, we started out handing out computer disks for people to use a bulletin board system. So kind of recognizing if the city was going to have information, then people should be able to participate. So that's a way in the weeds of history, but what it's meant is, I think we've also kind of had our eye on the ball in terms of our community engagement. How do citizens engage? How do people contribute information as well? And a couple of the things that the city then does through our department is we also run the Seattle channel, or seattlechannel.org, that covers meetings, does a lot of arts programming, a lot of community programming. We do the franchising for cable television systems. So because of the way the franchises work, we're allowed to regulate that and have some control over that, though much less control over internet, which is something we can come back to too. And then we've had a community technology digital equity program working with a citizens board that we have called our Community Technology Advisory Board. And so with that participation, we started some work to help connect folks to really partner with community-based organizations, and started a technology surveying to look at residents' level of access and broadband and barriers to use of internet and technology in general, and preferences, and continue to kind of work on that piece in our a grant program called the Technology Matching Fund Grant, which kind of interestingly, some of the work, support for hotspots at the public library, have come from a cable fund that's a portion of the fees that we collect from cable television services, which is going down as people unsubscribe from cable TV. So that's sort of just a big picture piece on our department start.
Yeah, that is definitely a lot of things to cover. So for purposes of today, I mean, really, we kind of want to dive into current digital equity issues, because as we all know, sort of making sure that you're connected to the internet today is really even more vital than it was in years past. And in a lot of ways, I would imagine that you feel like the spotlight has finally shone on the work that you are doing. So first, I want to start with Internet for All. The City Council recently passed a resolution. You all have produced an interesting report. Can you just talk us through what is Internet for All? Where does it stand? What's going on with it?
Yeah, and just for a little bit of context, as the city has done work to further broadband deployment generally over the years, so we've had some broadband planning work, which I can come back to, and then we've had a digital equity plan that passed in 2016 that we worked on. And then as council was seeing just this massive challenge, and I think even thinking about it beforehand, Alex Peterson, with support from Deborah Juarez and a couple other council members, said let's from the council, and let's really look at what does Internet for All mean, and particularly with this sort of crisis starting to hit with COVID trying to push that forward. And so there was a resolution called Internet for All that was introduced at City Council that said, let's really step up our commitment to make sure everybody gets connected, and to help address that gap for students and other vulnerable communities and unemployed workers. And so that that was passed and then presented, and then in September we came back and we went through and we did kind of a whole analysis, gaps analysis, and listing of what work is being done and proposing some strategies. And so that's this Internet for All Seattle report that was submitted. And kind of the foundation around that then is, the commitment and confirmation, both from the council side and the mayor's side that, let's really tackle this together. And I would also say in this context, let's tackle this together as a community, not just as city government. And that's something that, your efforts and others that city government can't do that alone, that we're just a partner as well, in really the community solutions. And so that, what's in the plan then is a number of action plan strategies. So which includes increasing awareness of those current low cost internet programs and device options, expanding those connectivity options in some areas of the city, the continuing side of partnering with community organizations to deliver programs, working with private and philanthropy to increase the funding so we can do that, doing some work on sort of championing state and federal policy as well, starting to develop this Internet for All coalition, and continuing to sort of build out the service provider offerings. So we're looking at a few sort of more specific things within those sets of strategies then as well, continuing to support the schools and students, and I think that's both continuing, working with Seattle schools. So we helped connect them with the cable companies, and actually, I've worked with interconnection over the years around device programs to help do the sponsorship for low-income internet programs. We're also looking at scaling up device ownership and supporting that, again, increasing some of the hotspot distribution, expanding some of the public Wi-Fi coverage as well. One of the things we've realized with COVID, for instance, is that there's public Wi-Fi at City Hall. There's public Wi-Fi at Summit Seattle Center. We don't have a huge amount of outdoor Wi-Fi. And when the community centers closed and the libraries closed, that left a number of homeless folks in the lurch and others. So looking at how do we increase that and do that externally. The library is actually starting to install external Wi-Fi at the libraries, which will be great. And I can kind of talk more about that. We're also looking at a possibility of supporting UW is doing some interesting work on a community cellular network as well. Saying, is there something we can do to support that as a different model? And scaling up, kind of a couple things we're looking at is a digital navigators program to work with community organizations and partnering sort of culturally appropriate assistance for folks to get signed up to internet, and to also continue kind of the grants, building the capacity of those community-based organizations who are really on some of the front lines of working with community.
Yeah, so one question, and this will touch on an audience question that just got past me. And by the way, hey audience, if you have questions, please use that little section down there. It says Q&A. We're happy to interweave your questions into this conversation, and we'll try and get to as many of them as possible. So send them in. We like your questions. David really wants to hear from you. So kind of one question that's coming from the audience and somewhat related to this is, what about access to hardware? So specifically, with the shutdown of libraries and internet cafes and the like what's the gap there? And maybe we can just broaden that question just a little bit more and say, like, what is the gap on hardware? What's the gap on actual connectivity across our city? Like where the piece is missing?
Yeah. So, kind of a combination. So first, just a little bit of thinking contextually too. So when we think about like technology opportunity and digital equity, then there's basically sort of 4 areas that we've identified that are areas that need focus on to make sure a family is whole, if you will, on having technology opportunity and opportunity period using technologies. In those areas then are the sort of internet access, and it's both sufficient bandwidth, as we've certainly seen during this COVID time, has become a huge issue with more folks all working and studying and so on at home, and at an affordable cost. We're looking at, what are the devices that are appropriate, and there's some really interesting, debate back and forth about, is a tablet enough, or do I need a larger screen? Do I need more power to be able to do my homework or apply for a job? But so thinking about devices and assistive technology for folks with disabilities. And then the skills and tech support. And I kind of lump them together because it's both where can I go for training and get assistance with that, but that's also often these days sometimes kind of a one-on-one assistance of how do I use Zoom, or how do I get onto the state employment site to apply for my unemployment or my benefits for my small business and so on. And then lastly, kind of the applications and services area. So internet skills and tech support devices, and then applications and services. So, is there a barrier when I go to a website in terms of finding my language to be able to apply for something, or even knowing how to navigate that that application form, or contribute to the civic dialogue? So those are sort of the areas as we think about kind of solving the problem of connectivity. And so even what we found from our survey, and we use a combination of, we've been fortunate in doing this technology access and adoption survey work and kind of combining that with census and American Community Survey data. King County just recently replicated our technology access and adoption survey, so we now have that more regionally, which is great. The Seattle Schools has done some work. So, but what we found, for instance, in our last report was that there were about 15,700 households without any internet at all. And so we've got those without internet, and those that are what I think of as underconnected with internet. And that number, for instance, like is, it's 5% overall for the city, but it's 25% for those who are below poverty level. And we also found that over 14% had limited digital skills, and that's much higher. So that was like 49% for African-American households, or those that are limited English are even higher. So we know that the higher the income, the more online activities are done on a regular basis. So that is a real cost to folks. So that's sort of a little bit of what we know. We also know that some of those barriers to people like signing up or finding low income internet programs can be language. One of the big barriers, of course, is cost to signing up, but there's also a trust and privacy issue that has to be dealt with if you're going to have folks feel like they can sign up. We know that that's a concern for some programs. Folks are concerned, if I put my personal information in to sign up for a low income program, well, is ICE going to come get me? So those are very real things that we also have to grapple with in some of the solutions. And kind of lastly, and this sort of replies to Kate's question too on the chat, is so we've got a combination of, really needing to help in the ecosystem of both having kind of the public access sites where you go, the libraries. We also had some community centers with Wi-Fi and kiosks. We also have some organizations ranging from Millionaire Club to the Ethiopian Community Center to Neighborhood House, who had computers set up for kids or seniors or adults to use. And so that has been really challenging. And so in our strategy, it's both how do we start to open up these community locations. Some of those programs have started to move services online. Like the library also recently opened up Your Next Job program and is doing some one-to-one remote work. so the combination of the access to hardware is helping folks get individual computers to use. So ownership program, or in some cases it's a loaned program. So schools are loaning some devices to students. Long term, there's a difference if you get a loaner device than if you own something and can configure it and add your own stuff in. And so that matters too. The libraries have been doing a loaned internet hotspot program, but like interconnection and a couple others. There is a low income program to be able to get hotspot service for an individual. So that's a little different to have it be owned by the individual. And that's something, for instance, the Seattle Schools has been getting hotspots that they've been giving to homeless families, or we've connected some folks in shelters with those.
Yeah, thank you. I mean, I think your points here just really emphasize to me a couple of things. One, the complex nature of digital equity work and all the different facets that come into that. And then two, sort of the disproportionate effects on immigrant and BIPOC communities. I mean, just as with many other social issues, seeing those communities in particular affected at a much higher rate than sort of white counterparts. And I think, so our time is already getting so short. It's terrible how quickly time goes by. So one thing that I do want to touch on, and we just had a question from another audience member about this, and it was in the script here as well. Municipal broadband, boil the ocean for us, 90 seconds. Municipal broadband, have you talked about it before? What is it? What's going on with it? Are we going to do it?
Yeah. So the city right now is not going to do municipal broadband. We looked at it a few years ago. Doing municipal broadband would cost about as much as a stadium. And the city strategy has been to facilitate the increased deployment of private internet. So for instance, we changed the rules so that CenturyLink could really build out their system to provide higher speed broadband through more of the city. We continue to sort of facilitate the applications for Comcast and Wave, our cable companies, to build out, and now 5G and the cell companies. So at this point, there's not a plan to move to municipal broadband. Some other cities have done that, or they've done hybrid models as well. And in some cases, they've done zones or areas to focus on getting better broadband into certain areas.
Yeah. And with the sort of private public model that we have right now, I mean, is there sort of required discounts for low income folks? I mean, like, is there supplemental ways that they can help pay for these private market internet solutions?
Yeah. So really good question, and I think the answer is kind of a combination of developing partnerships and advocacy to so partnerships and advocacy and support. So those sort of three things. And so one is where we need to partner with the companies and say, what can you offer, and keep it on the table? What is your low income offering? How do we help folks get in the door? And frankly, there needs to be more advocacy around pushing that those plans are sufficient and affordable. Part of how the original low income plans got started was, for instance, Comcast's was originally an FCC requirement or condition as part of a merger. Went back when it was AT&T and TCI, so way back when, in front of the FCC. So some of that happened federally to start. So we need that sort of continued advocacy to push for those models. The other piece is where, where there's opportunities to look at, locally to nationally to come up with public benefits as a result of those things. So part of why we have some money for digital inclusion in Seattle is agreements that were done as part of our franchising. As we look at 5G then and deploying that, then to continue to look, is there a way to do public benefit there or get something from that or a portion? Or is there a way to build in a fee on modems or something that would help fund that, something way to do that from a policy point of view. And kind of lastly, the other one is right now, is just the sponsorship. I mean, right now, most of the companies are not giving free internet. They're still charging something for it, even for the low income rates. That's not affordable for some. And so that's a place where there either needs to be donations, or we've talked about kind of an internet sponsorship fund to help offset that cost. And just lastly, we're also looking at models where, particularly for low income housing, where we might do an aggregated thing. So that uses some city backbone or others, but has kind of one on. So when you move into a low income apartment building, you don't have to worry about your internet. It just comes with the rent, just comes with the building. And so that's another model that we're looking at in terms of how to help that as well.
Yeah. So I've got just two more quick questions, and we have roughly 2 minutes for you to answer them in. So I'm going to ask them at the same time, and then you can sort of loop them in here together. So first, what's next for Internet for All? Like, where does this go? There's a plan, there's strategies, it sounds like a working group being put together. Does it go back to the council? Is there funding that the city is able to dedicate to it? Sort of give us like the 10,000, 50,000 foot level on that. And then finally, if people care about digital equity, digital inclusion, and IT infrastructure, like what should they be doing personally, like after they get off this call?
Yeah, so the short thing is, so we are sort of prioritizing and honing in on some initial costs for implementation around some of the Internet for All strategy, and working with the mayor's office and across departments on kind of what are those starting points that could go into either a budget supplement or a philanthropy partnership. And so right now we're just honing in on those. And then the second piece is in terms of what people can do. I'd say there's sort of two things. One is, if you're interested in a community organization and just helping out a community organization, we could connect you, or you can look at our list of technology matching fund projects online and see those community organizations that are doing some great work and volunteer, or we could introduce you there. We have there's a digital equity learning network that's part of folks from UW and Goodwill, and some others are part of. So to link up there, and the city has a technology, this community technology advisory board. So you could subscribe go to seattle.gov/tech, subscribe to our list, and that'll help you get on notifications for that, or I'm happy to connect folks there. Of course, you can contribute your old laptop to the sea.citi WTIA computer drive with interconnection to get some refurbished laptops out to the community. And there's some fundraising going on from Alliance for Education and others.
David, it's a pleasure to see you as always. I feel like we've got lots of places where we get to hang out together. So I appreciate you coming by and having a chat. Thanks everybody for coming in today. Next week at noon on Thursday, we're going to be talking to Alex Rose from the Office of Arts and Culture. And we're going to be talking about the creative community or creative economy and kind of what's going on there, and how we can help support those folks. So that will also be a very interesting conversation. We will follow up this event with a email that will come from us and include a variety of links and resources that you should be aware of. If you enjoyed today's event, please make sure to share the invite that you get for the upcoming events with your friends, your colleagues, your neighbors, so on and so forth. We love having people join us. So thank you all. I hope you have a wonderful afternoon. Big thanks, David. Really appreciate it. Have a great day.
Thanks.